Circling back to the deer population dropping, do you think that has to do with this hedge lines getting removed and like all the reduction of just actual habitat?
I don't, and again, I'm speaking specifically to probably 5 counties in South Central Iowa because I'm here all the time. If I'm in another county, if I'm any further west or very far north and east, very different, parameters. But down here, we have a neat feature where I can go on our Iowa GIS mapping software, and I do that when we get a new farm to see what it looked like years ago. Most of the time, if I go back to the 1930s to 1950s, it was more open then than now.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That's a
Greatly
good
more,
point. That's a good
greatly
point.
more open. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's that. I think, if I was just going to go through the timeline of things that happened, you go back to 2005, we had a super high deer population. They came in, they opened the rifle season. They allowed us to have a late rifle season in January. That, you know, so that started the population trending downward,
Mhm.
and which is what they wanted. They knew we were way too high for somewhat for carrying capacity of good habitat, but definitely socially for getting along with people driving and farmers. We had too many. They were going to do something, so
Mhm.
they did that. So we were doing good, and the population was probably trending down at a normal level. And then 2012 hit with EHD, and it just took another third of the herd out right there. And
Mhm.
then we got another little bout of it in 13, and it took them 2 more years to actually remove that rifle season. So I think that was the downward trend, and then everything started to trend back how it should. But then we got hit in 19 again. So it's
Mhm.
like we just can't seem to get out of this chain of every 3 to 5 year major EHD outbreak in some part of the best deer hunting in Iowa.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah. But here's another thing that's really kind of interesting where I've killed a couple of my biggest bucks. My friend still owns that farm, and then he has a neighbor that owns another 2,000. The neighbor owns 2,000 acres there, and is really struggling to get on big deer. And I know my friend, I still help my friend manage his 800 acres, and they're really struggling. So the neighbor called Bill Winke to do some consulting for him. So Bill came down, was working on the farm. Bill called me and he said, "What is going on there?" You know? And I said, "I don't know, but it's terrible." I'm
Mhm.
like, "It is nothing like it used to be." And that was like I was talking about it back in the day where I had 5 over 200. Two of them were there. I killed one of them, and
Mhm.
then turned around a couple years later, killed 198. I mean, it was as good as land got in Iowa.
Mhm.
Now it's bigger, well managed, no more cattle pasture. It's no, they've reduced to drive hunting, and this is Bill and I both gave the landowners some different recommendations, and at one point, our advice was radically different. Over the last 5 years, between my friend and the 2,000 acre guy, we figured it out through depredation tags. We collectively, meaning both parties, both landowners, have killed about 500 does on that place in 5 years. There's still tons of deer, but the hunting's getting worse. And that's what I put my recommendation was we stop. I know I can't get them to stop all doe hunting
Mhm.
because some of them still believe it has to be done. But what I think the problem is, all of our doe seasons, the easy doe hunts to manage deer are in January. So I think what we've done is we've sort of undone the genetic lottery of how whitetails, breeding, dominant bucks breeding, those does, because we're shooting the does with fawns.
Mhm.
You're shooting bred does in January. And I just think that we've done that enough that we've literally got that problem, and not shooting enough cull bucks has got the whole thing out of whack. So
Mhm.
like that was my advice. I said, guys, we've shot 500 does and it's getting worse. Why would we keep doing that? Like,
Yeah.
let's go another direction. Like,
Yeah.
so
That's just something I always wondered too, because I mean, there's a lot of people that preach shooting does, and it's like it feels like we're playing God sometimes.
exactly.
And I
Yeah,
don't know if that's a good thing because when
right.
we didn't do all these things, I mean, clearly, like what you're saying, it was better. And then once we try to interfere way more, it gets worse. It's like sometimes, yeah, that's
Yep.
something that has crossed my mind quite often because there is this debate where it's like if you're not shooting does, then you feel like you're being a bad landowner or a bad land
Right.
steward,
Right.
and then it just gets worse. And so it's like,
Yeah, and
well,
like what I took away, or where I left it with those guys, is my recommendation was on that place, shoot as many does as you can until about October 20th.
mm,
You know what I mean? And that goes against what a lot of people think, because, oh, I'm going to spook my spots, blah, blah, blah. And, it depends on what your priority is. I mean, these guys have big enough farms. You can allocate a few areas to shoot does that have no bearing on the rest of the, roughly collectively 3,000 acres.
mhm.
So that was my recommendation. Keep on your doe program, but all early. And luckily, like our depredation tags, if we get them, you could shoot them in early muzzleloader, which is mid-October.
Mhm.
You could
Perfect
shoot them
timing.
with bow. So,
Yeah.
during bow season. So there is a way to do it. Everybody just likes waiting for that late rifle season because they feel the hunting's done. They don't mind the pressure and everything else. So, but yeah, that farm there should be a study as to, I mean, because especially the 2,000 acre landowner, there is no project that he won't fund if he thinks
It'll do. Yeah.
it'll do it good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, it whatever can be done can be done. And it is on 3,000 acres in the best part of Iowa, a place that literally, because I've killed them, produces 200-inch deer. They struggle to get anything over 160 now.
That's so crazy. And
It
to
is
think
crazy.
and to think for that guy that bought that 2,000 acres or acquired it or pieces together, like he was doing it with the intention of, I know this is one of the best areas in the
Yeah,
entire country. And then if you want to shoot a 160, there's a lot of places in the world where you can do that for a lot
well,
cheaper.
exactly. I mean, and that's what's really got us kind of thinking about it. And I know, not focusing on harvesting whatever you want to call them, cull bucks, or just older bucks that are never going to be the target that he's after. And I think that needs to be a focus of both landowners as well. Literally, they need to shift some of their energies from taking so many does to trying to take out some of those cull bucks.
Yeah.
If they would do that, I think over the years that would help. That those things would help, because obviously the genetics are there.
Hmm.
And the shocking fact about it is, in my mind, because I know, because I was there, those farms were better when they were cattle pasture. Way better.
Which is taboo to say. That sounds
Yes.
crazy when you say it, but you were there and you
Yes.
know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gee.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it really is nuts. So I don't, that one there could be an interesting study case, and we would have had to have some more metrics in place,
Hmm.
early, to really be able to, to see what's there.
Illustrate and compare, but yeah, but I mean, enough. Yeah, that's so fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, that I would say that's because of my early successes there, that farm is a glaring example. But I think overall it is trending harder to grow true big deer in Iowa, than it used to be. And it's a little bit misleading, because the other thing now, you have very well, um, public figures that are very entrenched, the Lee Lakowskis and stuff, that do such an awesome job at managing on such a big scale. And people see their results and assume all of Iowa is like that. And it's not. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's probably the biggest, difference that I see, is what people, the perception of Iowa versus the reality of Iowa.
Hmm. Let me ask you this: Would you? This is a hypothetical that most people probably can't really compare to, but would you rather have one 2,000 acre track or 10 200s or 20 100 acre tracks?
The way things are trending nowadays. Now, before I answer, I have to ask, what's my goal? Is my goal to hunt true big high end deer?
You'll say, yeah, you want to kill Boone and Crockett animals.
The biggest farm I could have,
Okay.
without a doubt. And this is the problem, those smaller farms, those deer have to come from somewhere. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to buy this 40 acres or 80 acres in this neighborhood and another 80 in that neighborhood. Well, there's other people doing the same thing. And if they're all not on the exact same plan,
They're all trying to take the high end deers.
yes, and those are the ones that I see failing the most now, is that, because it's hard, especially it's hard to justify even an 80 acres. And 80 acres is a sizable investment.
half
And
a million dollars at
yeah,
least.
and you go there and to think, okay, I just spent $500,000. I don't have one deer that I technically should shoot, or I got to shoot this 120-inch 8-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what's so hard. If you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, for sure, I would say the more small parcels where you could provide quality habitat, quality food, and capitalize on that nowadays. And I mean, some of the main players in Iowa, and the guys that truly kill the big deer every year. What's their system?
Big
Big
chunks.
chunks of land.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it's interesting how that has even flipped in a decade to what you're saying, like how
Yes.
much the whitetail landscape has changed. And that's where sometimes I ask myself, like, well, how much more new revelations can really come with whitetail hunting? But to me, that you just illustrated there that things change and faster than probably what we realized. 10 years ago is pretty fast. Or 5
Right.
years.
But the problem is, the one reason that the perception of Iowa and the reality of Iowa are different is because, just using yourself as an example, you interact with way more hunters than most people, but you won't, if you keep living where you live, you won't draw a tag again for 5 years
Yeah.
or more.
Yeah.
So you have the vision of what happened today in Iowa and possibly what happened 5 years before that. And then, when you come 10 years from now, it could be you come next time, it's 10 years from your first hunt. It could be a radically different place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, radically different. And I see that same thing hunting out west. Guys are putting in 20 years for an elk unit. By the time they draw the tag, it's nowhere near as good as when they first started putting in. So
Mhm. Yeah. Well, even when we were driving, I was like, well, I hope the next time I'm here,
I remember you saying that.
Iowa is equal or better, and I hope
Yep.
it's not worse. And I mean, it's something that has to cross your mind, or at least
Oh yeah.
cross my mind.
No, it crosses my mind for sure. And I was fortunate enough last year to pass up some really nice bucks, like, not giants, but mid 160s. I don't think any of them would have squeaked 170, but I
Mhm.
think I passed 4 up like that. And so I'm hopeful that, I might have one to hunt in the future, but I didn't used to have to do that. We used to just find them and hunt them, and that was it. And that's way easier than having to try to grow them or manage to produce them.